Today's show is sponsored by the Northern Kentucky Fly Fishers. Our club promotes the sport of fly fishing by holding seminars and educational events, participating in conservation projects, and working closely with other organizations. And we really love to go fishing. If you'd like more information about fly fishing or would like to attend one of our free monthly meetings, visit this website or call our phone number. Oh, didn't hear you come in. I'm Craig Tresher, producer, editor, and sometimes cameraman for Fishing on the Fly. Got a great show for you today. I think you're going to enjoy it. It's all about fly tying. In just a minute, you're going to be meeting Aaron McDaniel. Aaron is 18 years old and one of the youngest members of Northern Kentucky Fly Fishers, but he's been tying flies for 8 years. He's extremely talented and he's a great teacher. He's going to show you some of the tools and materials that you'll need to get started in fly tying. Then he'll demonstrate some of the basic techniques and he'll finish off by tying 2 simple flies. Well, I'm going to get back to work. You enjoy the show. I'm Craig Tresher for Northern Kentucky Fly Fishers.
Thanks, Craig. These are some of the basic tools that I use for fly tying. We're going to look at each one individually, and I'm going to tell you what they're used for and how they're used. The first thing that you need is a vise, which is used to hold the hook while you're tying materials onto it. There are basically 2 styles of vise. There's a rotary, which allows you to turn the vise and the hook stays perfectly level, and non-rotary, which either doesn't move at all or you can turn it but the hook moves along with the head of the vise. The next tool you're going to need is a pair of scissors. When you're buying fly tying scissors, you want to get the best pair that you can afford. You're going to be using, if you tie a lot, you're going to be using your scissors quite a bit, and the better the scissors you get, the longer they're going to last and the better they're going to cut. Another tool that you need is a bobbin, which holds the thread that you tie with and keeps tension on it so it doesn't unwind when you let go of the thread. The next tool you need is a bodkin or a dubbing needle, which has many uses around the tying bench. It's used for applying head cement when you're done with a fly. It's used for picking materials out of a fly that are, like if they get tied down by the thread. And most dubbing needles have a tool on the end that's used for tying off the thread with a half-hitch knot when you're done. One tool I like to have is a small pair of needle nose pliers, which I use to pinch down the barb, which makes it easier to get the hook out of anything it might get hooked in when you're fishing. Another tool you might want to get, it's not absolutely necessary, is a whip finish tool, which makes a different kind of knot for tying the thread off at the end. The last tool that you absolutely need is a pair of hackle pliers, which is used for holding delicate materials as you wrap it around the hook. Traditional fly tying was always done with fur and feathers. Today's tyers use a mix of natural and synthetic materials for their flies. This is a saddle. It's a very common fly tying material. It's the back of a chicken or rooster. The hackle feather is actually comes off of this. It's a single feather off of the saddle. Peacock herl, which is off of the tail of a male peacock, the big feathers with the eyes on them. It's color that no other material, man-made or natural, has. It's very attractive to fish. Some of the best fly patterns in the world use peacock herl. Deer hair is a often used material. It's has natural buoyancy, so flies tied with it float. and when it's tied in, it's soft, so it makes the flies feel very natural to fish. Another feather that you can use is marabou, which is under feathers off of a turkey. It moves very well in the water, looks very natural. Some synthetic materials that you can use are crystal flash, which is usually tied onto streamer patterns made to imitate small minnows, and it reflects light, which attracts fish. Another actual fly tying material that's synthetic is chenille, which is used to wrap bodies on flies. It makes it look thicker and meatier. You can also get a lot of synthetic tying materials at craft stores or fabric stores. This is knitting yarn, which is another material that can be used to build up a body on a fly. And one of my personal favorite materials is closed cell sheet foam, which is sold in just about every craft store in America, and when you tie it on a fly, it will make that fly float very, very well. It has little air pockets in it that create buoyancy. It's very soft, it has a natural feel, and it's very, very easy to tie with. Okay, the first step in tying a fly is to put the hook in the vise. And you want to tighten down on it so it won't move while you're tying. Next, you need to tie the thread on. And to do that, you start a little behind the eye, wrap towards the bend of the hook 4 or 5 wraps, then you wrap towards the eye 4 or 5 wraps, which makes what's called a jam knot, where the thread is wrapped over top of itself. The next tool I'm going to demonstrate are the hackle pliers. They're used to hold onto delicate materials and assist in tying them in. I've already got a hackle feather tied onto the hook. I'm going to clip it in the hackle pliers and then wrap it towards the thread. Then tie it off with the thread. And trim the excess feather off. Okay, the next tool I'm going to demonstrate is the whip finish tool, which is used to tie off the thread at the end of the fly. You put the thread over it like that, and then turn it so the thread makes an upside down 4. Then you wrap this end of the thread over this end, which makes a knot. And you always want to wrap forward towards the eye. Then you pull one part of the loop of the tool out and guide the thread down with the hook on the end. Then trim off the thread, and then you apply head cement, which is one of the uses for the dubbing needle. You just get a little drop on the end of the needle and rub it across the thread wraps. Want to make sure it's pretty well coated so that knot doesn't come loose. These are some of the basic materials you need to tie flies. Now let's get started on our first fly, an Alaska boo. It's real easy, real simple fly to tie. Only uses 2 different colors of marabou and crystal flash. Marabou is it's underfeather from a turkey. Underfeather is an insulative feather. Keeps the bird warm. It's has very good movement in the water. It kind of breathes as you pull it through the water. Comes in a whole bunch of different colors. Most Alaska boos are tied with real bright, flashy colors. The Flashaboo, or this is crystal flash actually that we're using, it's a mylar material that's it's twisted, so it really reflects light. And I've got the hook in the vise already with the barb pinched down. I'm going to start the thread just behind the eye and spiral it back to the bend. I'm going to trim the tag end of thread and tie in a marabou feather by the tip at the bend of the hook. And when you pick out a marabou feather for this, you want one with very long, straight fibers. After it's tied in, move the thread up to about 1/3 of the way up the shank of the hook. Then I'm going to clip the end of the marabou in a pair of hackle pliers and wrap the marabou in touching turns up to the thread. Every couple of turns I'm going to stop and pull the fibers back out of the way so that none of them are wrapped down. Tie the tip of the marabou feather down and trim the excess. And I'm going to run a dubbing needle through the marabou to make sure all of the fibers are sticking out. And they should all go back over the bend of the hook. First, I'm going to tie in a bunch of gold crystal flash right in front of the marabou. I'm going to tie it on one side of the hook, then bring the rest of it over to the other side and tie it down and trim it to length. I want it to be a little longer than the marabou. Now I'm ready to tie in the second feather. Bring the thread up another 1/3 towards the eye. Trim off the tip of the feather, clip the other end in a pair of hackle pliers, and wrap it up to the thread. Remember to pull the fibers back every couple of wraps. Tie off the end of the feather, clip the excess, and straighten out the fibers. Next step is to tie in a bunch of red crystal flash on either side of the fly. Tie it in on the near side of the hook, then fold the rest over to the far side and tie it down. Then trim it to length. Make sure everything is tied down well. And then tie in the last marabou feather, this one bright red. I'm going to bring the thread right up to the front of the hook, but I'm going to leave a little bit of room to tie the thread off after I'm done. Grab the feather and a pair of hackle pliers and wrap it up to the thread, to the front of the hook. And tie off the end. Clip the excess and build up. Well, first I'm going to make sure everything is straightened out. Build up a small thread head. Whip finish the head. Trim the thread off and apply head cement. This is to lock down the thread and make sure it doesn't come loose. And that is an Alaska boo. Very simple, easy to tie pattern. That it's usually fished on a sink tip or full sinking line through deep pools where salmon rest as they're traveling upstream. The next fly we're going to tie is the Nitwit Pete. It's an easier to tie version of a very famous fly pattern called the Sneaky Pete. Sneaky Pete is a cork or foam-bodied slider. The shape of the body makes it dive underwater and float back to the surface when it's fished. This mimics a bait fish or a large insect trying to get away from a predator fish. Wow. The materials we're going to use to tie the Nitwit Pete are sheet foam, which you can find in just about any craft store or fly shop. Calf tail, which is a type of hair that's it's another item available in a fly shop. Rubber leg material, which is sort of like very fine rubber bands, and black saddle hackle. Get started by pre-cutting some pieces of foam for the body of the fly. I'm going to cut a piece a little under 1 inch long, then fold it in half and cut the corners off, which makes sort of a blunt-ended diamond. Then I'm going to punch a hole through the middle of it with my scissors. Now I'm going to cut a smaller piece of foam into a triangle shape. This is to give the body the kind of humpbacked shape that makes it dive. Next, I'm going to cut a small bunch of calf tail and even the ends in a hair stacker. Okay, the hair stacker is a tool that's used to even the tips of the hair, which gives you a nice, neat appearance on a fly. All you do is you put the hair tips down into the funnel of the stacker and tap it on the table 3 or 4 times. Let's get started by putting a hook in the vise. This is a long shank dry fly hook, fine wire. I'm going to pinch the barb down with a pair of pliers and slide one of my pre-cut foam bodies over the eye, down around the bend to keep it out of the way. Then I'm going to start a yellow thread at the eye and wrap it back to right above the point of the hook and trim the tag end of thread. Now I'm going to take the hair out of the hair stacker and tie it in so it's about the length of the shank of the hook. I want to keep the whole bunch of hair right on top of the hook. I don't want it to roll around to the side as I wrap the thread over it. Now I'm going to trim the butts of the hair at an angle so there forms a nice taper down to the shank of the hook when I wrap over it with thread. Now I'm going to move the thread up to about the middle of the hook and tie in 2 strands of rubber leg material with X-wraps. And I want them to be want them to stick out to the sides of the hook when I'm done. Now I'm going to wrap my thread up to the front of the hook, right behind the eye. I'm going to leave myself a little bit of space so I have room to tie the thread off when I'm done. Slide the body up over the tail and get the tail straightened out. Then tie the bottom part of the body to the hook, like that. And now I'm going to put a little drop of super glue onto the hook, right where the legs cross the body. Then I'm going to run a little bit up on the top part of the body too. I'm going to take my little triangle of foam and lay it on top of the legs, and then fold the top part of the body over and tie it down at the front. Like that. That's the body of the nitwit finished. Now I'm ready to whip finish this thread, tie it off, and trim it. Now you notice I left a little bare thread behind the body. That's so I can tie the hackle in. To do that, I'm going to switch to black thread, tie it in right at the back of the body, wrap it back about 1/8 of an inch. Then I'm going to tie in a hackle feather by the one end and wrap the black thread up to right behind the body. Then I'm going to put about 3 turns of hackle on. Now the hackle on this fly, when you fish it, you strip it in and it dives underwater, it will collect little air bubbles, which makes it look more realistic and more like something a large fish would like to eat. I'm going to tie the end of the hackle off and trim it, and tie off the thread with about 3 half-hitch knots. Then I'm going to trim black thread, Now this fly is basically done, but I like to decorate mine a little bit so they look a little better. To do that, I'm going to put 2 little red dots on to look like eyes, and I'm going to put 3 little black dots across the bottom of the fly. There's just something about that, a little bit of black on the underside of the fly that the fish can see, that makes it catch fish a lot better than a plain version of this. Then the last thing I'm going to do to finish the fly is put a little bit of head cement at the front of the fly where I tied off the yellow thread, and at the back of the fly where I tied off the black thread. That is the Nitwit Pete. This is an excellent fly for fishing in ponds and small lakes for bluegill and bass, and it's also a very good fly for smallmouth bass in streams. Well, that's about it for today. Our time together is almost up. I hope you've enjoyed our tying session. If you'd like more information about fly fishing or fly tying, visit our website or call this number. Our website is full of useful information. We publish a monthly newsletter and have links to fly fishing stores, guides, and other clubs. We also have links to the Fish and Wildlife departments of all 50 states where you can purchase your fishing license online. We even have a message board where you can ask a question and get a quick answer from one of our members. Don't forget, you can also sign up for our free fly tying classes at the website. The classes will be held at Northern Kentucky University starting February 12th, 2006. Classes start at 7. Space is limited and filling up fast, so register now. All the details are available on the website. For Northern Kentucky Fly Fishers, I'm Aaron McDaniel. I hope to see you on the stream.